Tonight, part 1 with comedian Ron James talking Strange Brew, Martin Short, Bill Burr, Billy Connolly, Nathan MacKintosh, George Carlin, the secret to his success and how to heal a country. Hopefully. It's Up All Night with Bob.
Just a note to the government, though. If you want this enterprise to be efficient, don't have the wake and bakes running the head shops. You want somebody who's going to be able to make change for a $5 bill, not look at it and laugh for an hour at how much Wilfrid Laurier looks like Mr. Spock.
Hey now, thanks for staying up all night with Bob. And if you haven't already and you enjoy what we've been doing here, please do hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment. I'd love to hear from you. You'd be helping us out a heap. And if you needed one more reason to watch the show, folks, tonight, my guest has been, for over 25 years, one of Canada's most engaging and prolific stand-ups, performing everywhere, and I do mean everywhere, from Victoria, BC to his hometown of Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, and all points in between, including just this past month, a performance at the prestigious Stratford Festival in Ontario. In addition to his roles in dozens of film and TV shows, including Strange Brew with the Mackenzie brothers, Tommy Boy with Chris Farley, and his very own Ron James show, which ran 5 seasons on CBC, he is now a published author with an absolutely delightful memoir of life on the road entitled All Over the Map, published by Doubleday Canada. Please welcome to Up All Night with Bob, Mr. Ron James. How are you?
God love you, buddy.
How's that?
Thank you so much. Thank you. My gosh, Strange Brew, my first movie. I remember my wife and I went to it, and I went down to get some popcorn, and she went, "There you are," and I looked up, and I was gone. So thank you very much.
How come everybody's going in? I don't know. It gets better, eh? What a waste of money.
That's when I was on main stage. No, 82, and I just got promoted to main stage, and Dave Thomas had always been a fan. Good guy. Ended up shooting the pilot and another part of a series with him years ago, and that's what was so nice about it all coming full circle when they did their Netflix special, gee whiz, 4 years ago now at the Elgin in Toronto, was to see them all again. They're genuinely friendly, authentic people.
That's amazing. So you were there. You were there for the Scorcese show there.
Yeah, I opened for them, and it was a stellar evening. I had such fun, and
oh my goodness. Well, I hope we get to see it at some point. There's been.
I do too. Kimmel hosted, and everybody was there, and the theater was packed with everybody come to celebrate their hometown heroes who made such an impact in the comedic world so many years ago, and still, as we were talking prior to recording here, still resonate 42 years later.
The first question worth 20 points, and the subject is authors. Margaret Meehan, Parkdale.
Henry Miller.
I'm sorry, Margaret. Let me please finish the question first, all right? What famous... Margaret Meehan, Parkdale.
Victor Hugo.
Oh, I'm sorry, Margaret. If you just let me finish the question first, see how it works. Okay.
Still has an impact. I mean, it's still appreciated. You can watch those things like you could watch old Dick Van Dyke episodes or Lucy episodes or Monty Python episodes. I mean, even though they're different, they're comedies, they're in different genres, they still have an impact today.
Since we're on the subject, and I was gonna get into this a little bit later on, I do want to talk about your book, All Over the Map, because it's
sure.
Tremendous.
Thank you.
But yeah, briefly on the SCTV front. This is today, so I am wearing. This is from the final season of SCTV, the Cinemax show, Gimme Jackie.
Fantastic.
Here today, Mark. I put together a rough cut for you, starting with the Atlantic City footage leading up to the free concert itself. Trippy. Jackie likes. Well, may we proceed, Mark?
So
fantastic.
You
got to get Marty on the show and show him that.
Well, if you have his number, please. Pass it along.
Yeah, he's out back in Nova Scotia right now cutting the grass.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So I'll give him a show. That's where I'm talking to you from. My place in Kingsburg, Nova Scotia. I come back every summer.
It must be lovely there. What's the temperature there right now?
It's nice and warm, but there's a beautiful sea breeze. I'd say it's about 26 degrees. Oh, that's Celsius. So it's probably around 70 degrees, 75.
Yeah.
But there's a nice breeze blowing off the water and the fog is just dissipated. And it's, when you're born to lobster blood country. You got to come back. There's like a beeper that goes off in your head every spring that makes you want to get back home and see old friends and family and drink dark and stormies on the porch.
Yeah.
And plus two, my mother turned 90 a couple of weeks ago, and so my daughters and their boyfriends were down, and she's a coal miner's daughter from where I was born, Glace Bay, Cape Breton, and can still do 2.5 hours on the color beige just after drinking a cup of red rose tea. So,
well, I was going to mention that because I saw the Instagram post yesterday that your mom just celebrated.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Was she funny? Was there a lot of laughs in the house? There were
a lot of laughs in the house. I mean, I got to hand it to my father, who's gone 5 years this month, Bernie James. He was of that generation that could remember jokes, and he was like. He could just rattle them off. If someone told it to him, he'd remember it. But he was also a great natural storyteller. And Mom was just goofy. I mean, she'd put a hat on and do 5 minutes. And there were a lot of laughs in the house. And my mother and father's threshold was always crossed by a pantheon of personalities. And we were working class people. Dad worked for the phone company and Mom was a homemaker. But it always seemed to be filled with friends and family. And the world has changed a bit now. There's more formality to it. Are you coming over? Let me give you a call. I'll text you. We'll set something up. We're back here. It's and it still exists to a certain degree. There's just a spontaneous nature of dropping in, dropping by. How you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they were either drinking his dark rum, playing crib in the kitchen, or having her pig skin and hot tea and homemade biscuits, and lots of laughs.
And 90 years young this year, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Happy birthday to your mom.
Thank you.
That's lovely. The book by which I mentioned, and we'll get back to some of the earlier gigs in a minute, but it really is a delight, and there's so many great stories in there. I want to ask you about your process, and I know that people will often say that to a comedian, but I really mean it in this case, because more than any other comic I can think of, there's a specificity of voice to a Ron James set that I think can fairly be called uniquely your own. And this, it's the subject matter, it's the POV, it's the speed, it's the alliterative turns of phrase.
Oh boy, I'm telling you, driving 2-lane roads up there, that in the blink of an eye can become a snow-crusted goat path a Taliban refugee with a winning lottery ticket wouldn't cross. Where azure blue skies curtain a tablet of forever white, and all around the wind is howling like a whore at the clinic.
Always extremely precise. And my assumption has always been, and this would be impressive enough on its own, that you memorized your entire set word for word down to the syllable. And that would be on its own, as I say, an achievement. But in the book, you describe it this way: standing on stage in front of 1,000 people, synapses cutting and pasting 2 hours of content at the speed of thought. And I thought, my God, are you able, and you're self-described as someone with ADHD. How in God's name do you do it, man?
Well, Rob, I'm telling you, and I'm not saying this, to be, fake humble. It's a mystery to me as well, because there's some days I'm surprised I remember to leave the house with pants on.
Right.
But when I was diagnosed with ADHD, they said that this ability is one of the assets of having this condition. So I didn't know that also acted as a support system for me on stage. But I happen to be cursed with a great memory. And, you remember those times as well when in reincarnation or incarnations, you overdid it. You drank too much, you talked too much. And that's one of the great things about age, is that you settle into your own skin eventually. I love being older for that reason. But I line my setup from end to end over 4 banquet tables before I go on stage. And I found a way of, pardon me?
Every time.
Yes. Every now and then when I get to a theater too late because I'm driving through blizzards, a Yeti wouldn't wander. Right? I've had to wing it. But I love that 1 hour prep time backstage where I'll just pace my set with I like a couple of real cold small Red Bulls. And I found they work for me. And it just locks in. But there's something else that happens when you walk on stage as well. And that's that symbiotic relationship between you and the audience, where you ride these laughs and everybody is in communal embrace with the night, and both are validating the art form. However, going through the crucible of stand-up clubs and the years at Just for Laughs and the other festivals I had to do where everybody paced backstage like, jungle cats in a cage.
Yeah, I've been back.
It was essential to go through that in order to find the place where I belonged. And I really want to honor the effort that I placed in the words and the rhythm, their pentameter, and how to land on the laugh at the end. Yeah. So that's the challenge. And everybody develops their own point of view over time. Everybody has their own approach. I'm always amazed at comedians who are just so laconic on stage, who just have a easy going, and some nights I've had those kinds of sets and I go, wow, I should do that more often, right? Where you just slide out, and particularly after about, 5 dates in a row on the road, and you just go, I'm just going to look at it a little bit this time. Boom, you slide out and the shells are just slipping into the chamber, as I said in the book, and you're popping those clay pigeons out of the air. It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
But once again, it's like Carlin said, stage time, stage time, stage time. There's nothing really that replaces that. And these last 25 years on the road and the 5 prior to that in stand-up, and I've just played theaters for 23 years. I saw the writing on the wall with that at the clubs. I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids just working the clubs. And I don't know how I managed to do it, working for beer tickets at the Rivoli or doing $600 corporate gigs, or 2 weeks on the road in the Peg at Rumors, where I was getting better, but I was paid a feudal wage. And that's why people have to tip their hat to comedians following their bliss who've answered the call of adventure, because the road takes no prisoners and comedy doesn't suffer fools. Once I stepped into my stand-up skin after 17 years as an actor, I really, really wanted to make it work. And Los Angeles was crucial for that.
Who was your biggest influence? In the book you mentioned Billy Connolly. Was he sort of,
Well, I would have, in my early years, just like everybody, I was just shaken. It was just a shift of the psychic paradigm here in Carlin, 7 words you can't say on TV, which you still can't, of course. So him, and then, coming of age with when Robin Williams ignited the zeitgeist. But when I saw Billy Connolly's first HBO special in California, I was out of work. I'd gone down to do a series called My Talk Show that Deb McGrath and Linda Kash had created, Ronnie Howard's company. We were canceled, and I was in the beginning of what would be 11 months of soul-sucking unemployment. Yes. With a wife and daughter to feed, mortgage to make, gas to put in the car for auditions. We were living way out in the valley at Topanga and Oxnard. And
I'm Oxnard and Coldwater, so
get out of here!
A little east of
cool.
there, but I'm just off Oxnard. Yeah,
there you go. So you're boiling today.
Oh, it's 1,000 degrees.
Yeah, man. Jeez.
And I've also had my share of unemployment, so I know whereof you speak.
It's the Nietzsche-esque thing. Whatever tries to kill you will only make you stronger, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, I saw that first special, and I think Whoopi Goldberg had seen him at the Edinburgh Fringe. And I watched this Glaswegian shaman thread the needle for 90 minutes on stage. And it was literally a calling.
True. Yeah. In Scotland, they say, if you're going to shag a sheep, take it to the edge of a mountain so as it pushes back better. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Didn't you know that?
So 2007, I was thanking him at Just for Laughs post-show. And this was interesting. My producer at the time, Lynn Harvey, she went up and it was a post-show party, which he never goes to, or he never went to. And I had done my concert at the Liberty Theater. He had done his, and it was packed with the usual, carcinogenically tanned Los Angeles managers and agents who knew so much about comedy, they never laughed.
Right.
And then there was Billy standing there, sage, tall, with his Custer-like goatee and long white hair that wandering pilgrims would seek for words of wisdom. And I came up to him, and I mean, he brought back such a memory of those days when my daughter was little and the struggle was noble. Not that it's not noble now, but I mean, I had people to feed. I had dreams to actualize, and he ignited them because he was singing the song of his fractured tribe, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell the stories of where I was from and the organic joy that guy had in performance. And he had an absolutely Dickensian childhood, and I asked him, I said, how did a Glaswegian welder born to poverty become an international comedic sensation? And his eyes lit with a blue fury, and he pulled a cigar from his teeth and he said, that's a question about fame. Fuck fame. Sing your song. Sing your song. Chase fame. See what that does to your fucking soul.
No
and
kidding.
Still saying this today, I get goosebumps. And so when you go, when people went to see the Oracle of Delphi before a big battle, I mean, there was nothing soft about the message. Right. And that stayed with me because everybody always said to me, Ron, you're never going to get anywhere if you keep doing your act here.
Right.
You got to go. But you know what? I learned, brother, that 2,000 people laughing at the Windspear Theater in Edmond during a snowstorm sounds exactly the same as 2,000 people laughing in Las Vegas when it's warm.
Right. And
I can do my kind of show. I remember I played Northern New York a couple of years ago and at a casino, and this fella came up to me from the South and he said, how come you use so many big words? You got to do more titty jokes. I want to hear more titty jokes. I thought, what is there, a chain of clubs in the U.S. called Dicky Titties?
Yeah,
my buddy, Nathan MacKintosh, who wrote a brilliant little script that I'm doing. We shot the first half of it last year, and the other 6 episodes are being shot here for 5. Lots of fun. He went down. He's about 20, 25 years my junior, I guess. He's been playing the Comedy Cellar in New York City for the last 9 years. And they put him on 1:45 in the morning the first time. He said, look, you got to kill. And he's just got a prolific amount of content that he pumps out all the time. Right. And they do not, coming second isn't good there. You've got to kill. And I've sat there and watched Dave Attell walk on stage at 1:30 in the morning and been blown away at how great his comedy is. So that's not to say that what's coming out of America is any less than here. It's just one of the, I just made peace with that here, that I'm going to work here and work for me.
But it's also a different, like I had Brent Budd on the show a few months ago, and we got to talking about his point of view on stage. And I said to him, I've seen him flummoxed, I've seen him confused, I've even seen him mildly irritated, but never truly angry. And I was reminded of that again in the book, where you say, angry iconoclasts are distrusted in a country whose motto is peace, order, and good government, which made me laugh. But it also makes a good point, because I can't think of a truly angry Canadian stand-up on the level of, say, a Lewis Black or a George Carlin, even, or a Sam Kinison, going back a bit.
Can you? I don't know. I can't think of.
No, it's a question of population size, Rob. 375 million people in America. You can have half that country hating your guts and still have 6 times the population of Canada buying tickets to your show.
Right.
That being said, in terms of anger, I think there's room for an angry Indigenous comedian, but the networks in the country are chicken shits.
Yeah.
They still want it soft. I mean, we can have a fucking convoy of dumb fucks and trucks take Ottawa hostage on diesel fumes, blaring trunk horns, and shitty sing-alongs for 3 weeks in February, infused with anger, a furnace fired by the hatred of fascism. And that's okay. But God forbid a comedian on stage in Canada call a spade a spade.
Right.
For some reason, we have to toe this party line. And I'm past that point, by the way.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to my tours this year. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be profane, but I think there's been such a psychic shift in this country. And we've gotten this, look, the Convoy in Ottawa was a cheap January 6th cover band, influenced by the same Fox News hysteria, Alex Jones fiction, Breitbart fantasy, and rancid effluvia that burst from the toxic bowels of a morally bankrupt Republican Party that metastasized into a flesh and blood mob of mouth-breathing, batshit crazy, Trump-addled zealots and MAGA hats and Duck Dynasty camouflage looking to put the coup in cuckoo.
Well, this is, I'm really glad we're talking about this because I wanted to ask you, you know, you had this tour coming up. You'll be out west. Well, you'll be everywhere, I'm sure, as always. But when you are out west, knowing that there's going to be some folks in that crowd who, let's face it, right? I mean, just statistically speaking, are going to be what they may not have been in the convoy, but they may very well have supported. And I have wondered this a lot, especially the last couple of years. I've gotten angrier, not so much in I've gotten less angry in my personal life,
yes,
but more angry in a public way.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so like, how do you manage it? Because I feel like if I were to get on stage, it would just, that anger that would just seep out, and not in a useful, constructive, funny way.
Well, that's the trick with
right.
that's the trick with stand-up. I mean, you really have these 4 black horses at your disposal. I mean, like Robert McKee said, he called it the angry art, right?
Yeah.
Comedy. But you need that control, and that's where time comes. And so in terms of what I'm going to say about these issues, because you have to speak truth to power, that's the role, and you have to be an equal opportunity offender. So it's where you find the balance between both parties.
Right.
And it's where you find the balance in life, because I think balance and the ability to discuss absolutes has gone out the window. I mean, it's a given, Rob. How do you rationalize with people who think 2 + 2 = 7?
Right.
How do you rationalize with people who don't believe that science is true? Look, if it wasn't for Jonas Salk finding a cure for polio, we'd all be wearing leg braces.
Leg braces, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I try to place my comedy, and in the 2-hour show that I do, I try to land on all kinds of different bases, because there's people from all walks of life in that theater. And I've always tried to respect, and I've done it fairly well, I think. I've always tried to respect the money that people paid to see me on a cold winter's night when there's so much more of a reason to stay home.
Right.
Watch TV. There's 5,000 different channels they can watch. But this is the balance. How do you strike the balance between artistic needs and audience expectation?
Right.
And audience expectation is changing.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the mood of the country has shifted when you're back out on the road.
Yeah.
I don't know that it has necessarily. It feels as though, I don't know. Once we come out,
well, Canada was still voted was voted right behind Denmark, or maybe before Denmark. One of the best countries in the world to live. They've done questionnaires to the people on how they feel about the country. And for the most part, everybody's relatively content coming out of this, this COVID world, or even, and I guess we're in it and everything. But suffice to say that the joy I get from hitting the road, I will never let the anger I might have at an issue supersede the mandate of my job, which is to get laughs. If you want a sermon, you can go somewhere else. If you want to see anger and vitriol, you can watch the parliamentary proceedings. So you have to be judicious as to how you tip the apple cart. And I never want to lose the room, right? I just don't. Yeah. And because there was such joy amongst the people coming back to laugh together in a communal experience.
It's interesting what you say about, sort of always keeping the audience in mind, because I've seen comics. I'm thinking of, you think of a guy like Bill Burr, who I think is a tremendous comedian, but, I've seen him do shows at clubs here. I've seen him do the big shows do the big show gala in Montreal. And I've seen him very deliberately lose half of his audience in the first 5 minutes of his set. Have you ever seen him do that? He'll come out and say the most provocative kind of, it sounds misogynist, it sounds whatever. And it's almost as if he's trying to lose half the crowd to see if he can't get them back before the end of the set.
That's interesting.
It's a high wire act that I would never want to do.
That's the playing with fire thing. I saw Carlin 6 years before he died at Harrods in Vegas, paid $75. Yeah. He talked for 90 minutes and never got a laugh.
Yeah.
And never cared to.
Yeah.
That's when he'd found his authentic voice. And I loved his autobiography that was posthumously read by his brother. Yeah. And I watched the first half of the HBO documentary on him. And it's remarkable. But, I couldn't lock myself in a room for 6 days doing cocaine and then come out the other side and be funny.
No, and also I think, to be fair, I think his later late stuff was less funny, and it was very angry. And I think the second half of that documentary is as good as the first, and I think the whole thing is marvelous. And I was a huge George Carlin fan. But yeah, I mean, I think you almost have to acknowledge that it wasn't about the laugh. Like, if you want to sit down and have a laugh, you're going to have a hell of a lot better time listening to Class Clown than you are, anything he did in the last 20 years.
And yet, what the comedians said who were interviewed there, I think it was Seinfeld who said, yeah, there weren't a lot of laughs in those last specials, but there was always one or two lines that were absolutely prophetic.
Absolutely. And I think everything he has said has turned out to be spot on.
It's true. And what's interesting is both the right and the left embrace him.
Kind of claim him as their own. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
It is.
And yet his daughter clarifies it. She says, no. He believed in science. He'd have gotten a vaccination.
Hey now, thanks for watching. Next week, more with the great Ron James. And in a couple of weeks, a good friend of mine, actor Sujit Varghese from Kim's Convenience and Transplant, will be here. Really looking forward to chatting with him. Good night, everybody. Hit that subscribe button, please. I love you.